In recent days, we've brought you stories about Canadians who have traveled overseas, intent to fight and die for ISIS. Tonight, CBC has learned about parents who risked everything to try to pull their sons out of the fight. Young men seemingly recruited into ISIS by a fellow Canadian, Andre Poulin. You've seen him before, but never in this light. Adrian Arsenault has the exclusive details about the signs of trouble no one saw.
My name is Abu Muslim. I'm your brother in Islam here in Syria. I originally come from Canada.
The ISIS campaign featuring Canadian Andre Poulin, or Abu Muslim, was released last summer, a year after Poulin's death. One ISIS chronicled like a grotesque video game. Security sources tell CBC it's been a disturbingly effective recruitment draw. ISIS even produced an Abu Muslim banner for Twitter and Facebook accounts. It's been downloaded globally. But it seems some of the most effective recruiting may have happened while Poulin was alive. CBC can now connect at least 5 young men to Andre Poulin, 5 Canadians he either took to the fight or influenced into going. All people he met in Toronto's East End. He'd moved there from Timmins a few years ago, and new friends were waiting. Those who knew him as Uncle Umar, someone who'd posted thousands of messages on a forum called Umma.com. A young convert so immersed he dished out advice, always signing off, Shaheed Inshallah, martyr, God willing. Surely a sign of what was to come. Researcher Amarnath Amarsingham has gone through some of the 12,000 posts.
So he did achieve a kind of celebrity status in this chat forum, and a lot of people who talked to him on the forum wanted to meet him in person. And one of the earlier people he meets is Muhammad Ali, and Poulin was giving him advice on how much money to bring and what to bring and those kinds of things. So he kind of leaves to the oil fields to make a quick buck to travel to Syria.
Muhammad Ali, known as Abu Turab, now believed on the ISIS front lines. He viciously threatens Canada online, praises the attacks in Ottawa and Quebec, has always suggested Poulin was his influence. Then there were the 4 young Canadian friends of Bangladeshi descent, Tabarrul, Abdul Malik, Adib, Noor. We don't have photos for all of them. They thought so much of Poulin, they reportedly called him their sheikh. He left for Syria around late 2012. They followed. If this was the typical scenario, that might be the last you'd ever hear of these young men. They'd just vanish into the fight. Not this time. 2 of their fathers quickly figured out that they were flying to Lebanon before heading to Syria. And so they did what panicked parents around the world have always wanted to do. They got on a plane, they flew to Lebanon, they found their sons, they convinced the young man to get out of there and come home to Canada.
I was like any other regular Canadian.
A community leader remembers that these parents thought they had saved their kids' lives.
But ultimately they came back and with their parents.
So all 5 go, including Andre Poulin, but 4 come back and Poulin stays.
Poulin stayed. Then their son told him that he will study here. He will not come back now.
Andre Poulin did not come home. He stayed and died fighting in Syria. Back in Toronto, Poulin's young, supposedly rescued friends became frustrated and isolated. And so last summer, at least 3 of them left again to go join ISIS.
This is Friends of Abu Muslim from Canada. We're in Turkey now, and we want to know which way to get into Syria and join Islamic State.
Abu Turab then guided them into ISIS's hands. Their parents, once sure they'd done the right thing, are broken, don't seem to hear from their sons anymore.
The parents are so depressed, and especially the son's mother, so depressed. They are passing their times and lives just under depression.
Until this realization, the story of Andre Poulin was thought to be of a small-town man radicalized alone who left Canada alone, shocking those he left behind.
I was like any other regular Canadian. I watched hockey, I went to the cottage in the summertime.
But maybe no one should have been surprised at what happened.
I mean, if we saw somebody like that now, of course, things would be quite a bit different. Mr. Poulin said...
The assistant crown attorney in Timmins thought he understood Andre Poulin back in 2010. was about to take the 20-year-old to trial for threatening the life of his employer, carrying a weapon, the stolen box cutter and bike lock. But there was no trial. Poulin just pled guilty.
And he seemed very reasonable. He knew that, you know, he was probably going to be convicted and our case was strong, and he agreed to plead.
So it's not like I was some social outcast. It wasn't like I was some anarchist.
It was a time in his life that ISIS recruitment video rather glossed over. Not quite as simple as that. Verbeek has gone back through the file and notes from police and sees warning signs that these few years later now seem key, starting with overheard comments about Poulin wanting to go to Afghanistan, wanting to fight somewhere, being angry with Canadian soldiers.
While he was working at the gas station, he saw a military vehicle pull up, and he said something to the effect that, "I wish I had a bomb to blow those people up."
He also allegedly threatened to burn down his employer's gas station and accused him, a Muslim, of being an infidel for not adhering to Poulin's strict interpretation of Islam.
He then goes on to say that, that each time Mr. Poulin's behavior seems to get worse to him, and he felt like the authorities underestimate what he was capable of. Mr. Poulin stated to him that he does not recognize infidel law. So he didn't recognize the law in Canada. He saw himself as adhering to a higher law, you know, one of Islam.
It was just a few years ago, but Canada was different then. Verbeek doesn't believe the RCMP National Security Unit was ever called, or CSIS. Doesn't think anyone discussed taking away Poulin's passport. Just saw it as an odd case. He served his probation, went to Toronto, and we know what happened next.
Where did you think 5 years down the road he'd end up?
Well, just from speaking to the, to the victim and some of the other people around him, I thought that hopefully they'd be able to talk him out of his radical views and that nothing would come of it. You know, just a kid blowing steam.
Looking back, Andre Poulin was isolated, spoke of violence, of wanting to go overseas. He was acting out. Now, those would be red flags, and hopefully someone would intervene to save a life, and not just his. Adrienne Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.